can you create Amazon-like delivery speeds without building Amazon-like fixed infrastructure, which is a very hard problem to solve. And now lob in a very tenured industry that is heavily focused on capitalized equipment, and your capacity is defined by the quantity of machines that you have within a building. Can we mimic that exact same scale? The question is rarely actually, how do we improve X by 10%? The question that you're really asking is, should X even exist in the current form that it's in? I think that what people should take away from that is when you stop accepting industry norms at face value, that's when you unlock innovation.
Hello, and welcome to Speaking of Supply Chain, where we explore trends, current events, and innovations impacting the logistics and supply chain industries. I'm your host, Ellen Wood. Supply chains today aren't struggling because they lack tools. They're struggling because those tools aren't always connected by people who see the whole system. Engineers are often trained to optimize within silos, but what the industry desperately needs are problem solvers who can think across functions, constraints, and stakeholders. Today, we're going to explore how shifting the way that engineers have historically approached problems could be the key to building more agile, integrated supply chains. Joining me today is Brent Hagan, a leadership developer and operational excellence veteran, to share some insights that have led to the launch of Lob, a company that reimagined the logistics of print and mail. Welcome, Brent.
Hi, thanks for having me today.
Of course, great to have you here. I'm excited to get to our topic today, which I think is going to be hugely impactful to the conversation. But before we get started, let's get to know you a little bit better. Our question for today for Icebreaker is, what is a weird food that you have tried, and would you eat it again?
Yeah, I think when I give the answer, your listeners, which I recognize, includes a heavy international audience, isn't going to think like the food itself is that weird. I think the context in which I received the food was pretty unique, and so my answer is goat, which goat is served all around the world, but in this specific case. I wasn't prepared for what I was getting ready to walk into. So I was in Monterrey, Mexico, actually doing due diligence on a manufacturing site that the company at the time I was working for was looking at. And Monterrey, Mexico in particular, is very famous for its grilled goat. There's a number of those restaurants like all over Monterrey. And so we went to one. It was supposed to be one of the best in the city. And we sit down, and I didn't realize like what cuisine we were going to have. And everything was already set up for like the table of 8. There were large dishes of tortillas and beans and rice and all these different vegetables and sauces and stuff. And then I was like, oh, cool. I was like, are they going to bring out, different meats, like very ignorant, like fajita trays for each one of us to pull from? Like, what is this gonna look like? And they're like, no, it'll be like one main dish we all pull from. I was like, oh, okay. And they bring out a goat, the entire goat with its head and everything on a large tray, its feet dangling up in the air, and then you just kind of picked off what meat you wanted and served it to yourself however you wanted. And I was just not prepared for it to be served to me that way. And it was great. I really enjoyed it. And I would definitely do it again.
I've had goat before, but I've not had it served roasted whole like that. I have had both lamb and pig served that way, a full roast. And it's absolutely delicious. And it's a unique dining experience that you can't replicate it with just like a chicken. It's not the same thing at all.
No, it's not even close, and like there are certain things that you just expect to have the head served with, right? Like you order a branzino, or something, like I'm going to expect to have the entire fish. I think anybody can think back to A Christmas Story when the duck is sitting there and it's served at the Chinese restaurant and
it's smiling at me.
It's smiling at me, yeah. And he chops the head off right there and goes away. Like everyone has certain expectations, but if you're not prepared for it, it is just like A Christmas Story. It is definitely off-putting.
You know what? Mine is a little similar. So I'm a very adventurous eater. There are very few things that I'm not willing to eat, but I'm always willing to try something. But one thing, and I remember it, and this was a first. It wasn't an only. When my parents moved to the South, when I was already an adult, and they moved to southern central Alabama, and we went to a crawfish farm and bought live crawfish. And if you've ever been to a crawfish boil or had a crawfish boil, they're delicious, obviously. If you like Cajun or Creole cuisine, you might have had crawfish in an etouffee or a gumbo. But in order to prepare the crawfish, live crawfish for eating, is a very unique process, and it takes hours to do. You wouldn't think it would be that much, but it's very involved and so worth it. A crawfish boil is absolutely delicious, but it's one of those things where you have to wonder who is the first person that looked at this tiny little freshwater crustacean and thought, I want to eat that.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Like this definitely feels like it's worth the effort, you know?
Exactly. They're
Yeah.
so tiny that the reward is so little for the amount of effort that has to go in. You would think a fish or or a goat would be a lot more, worthwhile in terms of cost benefit ratio, but the crawfish has its place in my heart. It really does. Crawfish are delicious.
Yeah, I agree.
So that has absolutely nothing to do with our topic today. Our topic is engineers, or just in general, the supply chain, and challenging some very staunchly held beliefs about the way things need to be approached. So you've spent a good portion of your career in operations, driving team performance, professional development, and trying to increase whatever you were trying to do for those companies through your teams. So what types of challenges do you see most commonly in how these engineers, because you have been working in supply chain and operations, typically engineering students, graduates, those type of individuals, how do they approach their problem solving?
Yeah, I think the most common challenge, and again, this is in the framing of like new college graduates. It's the narrow framing in which they will address a problem. Engineering grads are generally taught to solve the problem that's put in front of them, right? Optimize this line, reduce this defect, improve this throughput metric, and they're very, very good at isolating those variables. What they have to, I think, learn over time, and it often involves them having to get into the business in order to do it, is they're not as strong at taking a step back and asking, is this even the right problem? And that can lead to, even better technical fixes that don't actually that will move the business even further forward.
That's one thing that at Meebach, we're consultants. And so that's one of the tenets of what we do is, when someone thinks they have a problem, it really often does take a fresh set of eyes or stepping back away from the problem to really see that bigger picture. Can you think of an example when one of your students or one of your employees just completely missed that bigger picture?
Well, again, I think if you go back to that throughput issue, right? You tell someone like maybe it's the number of finished goods that need to get out the door, and they say, okay, what am I going to do? I'm going to go to my theory of constraints textbook and say, ooh, like I need to fix my bottleneck, and I need to improve the cycle time of that bottleneck, and it's like, well, is that the actual problem? Like, do you have an appropriate buffer in front of your bottleneck to make sure that your downtime is minimized, right? Do you have within that bottleneck, do you have the right overall capacity in totality? If you improve the cycle time, have you actually fixed the total output? And then on top of that, again, like just starting with that fixed mind, that fixed point and saying like, I need to improve my bottleneck. Well, most traditionally, your bottleneck is somewhere within your middle processes, like almost pretty holistically. And so what have you done downstream as a result of that? Have you just created the next bottleneck? Do you have your staffing balanced as a result of that? All of these questions, have to be asked.
How does this mindset of, not taking this problem at face value, and how does that translate into the business and innovation for startups?
Yeah, I definitely think that the same concept which we're talking to about the context of an engineer and how they should think, have a systems approach to it, directly applies to a business as well. It's startups like Deliver, where we were solving a very specific and very hard problem. And our thesis in that space was, could we create Amazon-like delivery speeds without having Amazon-like fixed infrastructure, which as everyone, all the way up to Target, has proven very, very hard to mimic, right? Walmart's maybe the only use case where they're like, yeah, I think we've got this figured out, as a direct competitor. And now at Lob, answering the same question in a different industry, which is, can we create scale without fixed cost and leverage inherent technology? So with that, when you look at those two problems, it's rarely like, how do we improve X by 10%? The true disruptors in the space are saying, should X even exist? Because those are the things that are going to accelerate an industry forward, and not just accepting some sort of industry norm at its face value.
Well, and I see your point that trying to replicate what these giants do. I mean, we're talking about Amazon and Walmart and Target, and these are not startups. These are huge, huge corporations that have the means to be able to try these different things out or do something a little bit differently. But when we're talking about startups like Lob, what other parallels do you see between this approach, this evolution of this approach of looking beyond face value, and how did that influence what you did with Lob and reimagining that print and mail supply chain?
Yeah, what's interesting is, you talk about like finding the right role at the right time for me personally, and the journey that I've had and how it supports where Lob is today. I started off working for the Eaton Corporation, a top tier manufacturing company, in a development program where they really taught me how to develop some of the thinking I have today, moving into private equity, building first and third party supply chains, all of which, Lean Six Sigma being a foundation of almost every job that I've ever had, whether I was using those tools or teaching people how to deploy those tools. And then moving to Amazon, where scale is absolutely everything, and how do you automate and standardize processes to the nth degree, to where you're measuring things, defect injection by the 100,000th of a decimal place. So coming into Lob, it takes all of those experiences and says, like, what do we really have here? Lob was the original API in the industry, and it's something that we're very proud of. And what came as a result of developing that API in a venture-backed environment was saying, like, how do we keep fixed costs down? So a very robust third-party manufacturing network was built. And one of the pieces that you can often run into when building a network of that scale, is building too much of it, actually. So
Over engineering the problem.
yeah, exactly. What ends up happening, what you hear is, like, very common across any industry that operates with third party manufacturers, be like, oh, we've got 57 partners in our network. We've got 100 partners, and people think that scale is like a battle card, that just sounds great. And it does. Like, it reads incredibly well on a pitch deck. What they often won't recognize is the quality that comes as a result of that. Your ability to have any sort of quality conformance standard is almost impossible. You've got contracts out the wazoo that you have to manage through. Each partner in that relationship is very different, and you have to manage those interactions. And so that sheer scale introduces unnecessary volatility. And so the
And
problem
complexity.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely complexity. In every different form, like each one of those is a new technology
Exactly.
integration. Each one of those is a different cadence in which you're interacting with them. The problem that when I arrived that we wanted to begin to solve is not just how do we have a robust manufacturing network, how do we have a robust supply chain that leverages an industry where frankly, most of the industry was built in a way that solving a scale problem that was much larger than it is today, right? We know within direct mail manufacturing, there's been a retraction in that overall industry. Um, and the logistics that supports it also, that's been the same way. And you see that that consolidation happening, right? And when PE often enters into those equations, that's when you see that, right? And their ability to begin to merge those. And so what I wanted to say is like, there's there's no doubt that there's excess capacity sitting across the industry in multiple different ways. And so we don't need to replicate the size of a Goliath. Um, we can replicate the size of that Goliath leveraging technology instead of cash investment and focus every dollar we spend on technology and not the next piece of equipment that we need to buy. And it was my experience and the development over those years in systems thinking, and understanding constraints and understanding third parties and contract negotiations and all of it that really led to this moment.
Those are some of those rigid structures that you identified in the traditional print and mail supply chains that you knew you wanted to change. But what were some of the potential that you saw by doing it differently? Because I know a lot of times these innovations or these innovative concepts get shot down at even at the idea level because there's not enough potential, there's not enough improvement, there's not enough ROI in order to change the status quo.
Yeah, I think often what people go back to like the ROI conversation and they'll say like, yeah, is this justified? What it often comes down to is people think it's really hard. So do I actually want to do it? You know, and I'll give you a really great example. Um, we had a robust manufacturing network when I was here, when I first got here, and we were probably like 2% or a little bit more of total revenue of any one of our manufacturing partners. And it's enough where it's like, man, they would prefer you didn't go away, but if you did, you know, it's kind of like, nah, you know. And so what I really wanted to do was have like table stakes there. Like we need you and you need us, and how do we build a roadmap together? And so that was pretty solvable. You know, that's not like new world thinking, but it did have a meaningful impact to what we were trying to save, for the dollars that we were trying to save and the reliability that we were trying to create. But when you look at the greater environment that we began to see, is we were handing all complexity to those third parties and saying, just tell it how much it costs, and you go figure out how to get this in the inbox, in home. And it just doesn't work like that. And you're paying margin on every single transaction, every mental effort that somebody puts into it. So we saw siloed plants, we saw very opaque logistics, where your data is a black box. It's spending as much time with your logistics providers as it is with the USPS itself. And we saw a lack of price competitiveness within the marketplace for how you can negotiate those rates. And so I started to ask like, hey, like, why can't we take the patents that we have on the manufacturing side and build our own logistics network that solves this problem, right? And we'll use third party logistics providers and connect them through our technology where they're all interacting and queued in a way that they're not used to doing. And the industry hasn't historically wanted to do it. And the answer I basically got was, well, that's really hard. And it's like, well, that's why we're here, right? Like we're here to solve like really hard problems. And if it's that hard of a problem, like, boy, does that sound really interesting, you know. And that's where we're really beginning to differentiate ourselves, right? Like we have very transparent pricing now. We have visibility to the full life cycle of the mail piece, all the way to the person's mailbox, which is fairly unheard of. And we've broken down all of those silos in between.
It makes me think of this cartoon that I'm sure people have seen all over the place. And it's this speaker standing up in front of a crowd of people alleged to be maybe a politician or something. And he says, "Who wants change?" And everyone rains their hands. He says, "Who wants to be the change?" And everyone has their hands down. No one wants to be the one to have to do the effort and the work in bringing those innovations to life. And I mean, you've talked to us a little bit about what, one of those assumptions that you had. Are there any other industry assumptions that you challenged with this idea, this mindset of not accepting what has historically been done the way it's been done?
Yeah, great question. First of all, I've always wanted to be the change. Just to comment, I've had a number of managers, including our CEO now, just like who said like, "You're always looking for the next hill to charge, aren't you?" And it's like, yeah, like why not? Like we're here, like let's go and do it. We might as well. But to answer your question, there's been a number of thoughts that are things that we've executed on that we've challenged over time. The first one is at the industry level, it is taught to the customer base that as it relates to postage cost, that postage is postage and it's a pass through. And it just really isn't the case, right? Like you can very accurately model postage cost and understand the benefits of saturation, not just at the individual customer or campaign level, but actually the macro level, begin to predictively model what that postage is going to cost and lower that overall postage that someone pays. And so that's one that we're working really hard to educate the entire industry on is like don't allow your vendor to tell you that it's a pass through. Like yes, it's a pass through in the sense that whatever bill comes out, like that's what we're going to need to pay. But let's not assume that that's like the best and final price because there are ways in which we can generate favorabilities for you in the long term through a robust collaboration between customer and vendor. And that's been a challenging assumption. Um, I think the second one, I touched on this a little bit more previously, but I'll touch on it now. Was understanding that you don't have to necessarily inherently tie fixed infrastructure into overall capacity. And so as this industry continues to grow and morph and change, one of the things that's coming through is something that's called zone-based pricing. Zone-based pricing is an initiative by the USPS to mimic that of parcel, where it begins to look at the cost from the destination it's going to the entry point, so it more accurately reflects the actual cost structure that the USPS is inheriting. That doesn't exist in direct mail, which might surprise a lot of people, right? Like a postage stamp is a postage stamp, and it always kind of costs the same. But that's again, like that's something that we're trying to change, and zone-based pricing also begins to inherently influence that as well. So you think about from an industry perspective, what does that mean for your small to medium-sized regionally based manufacturers? To operate at a national campaign level, just like in the parcel world, they're going to have to think very specifically about how they begin to target geographies, and what that means to not have their cost explode. Um, and so that's one where like our APIs are incredibly well suited to solve those problems, as well as like our nationally built network, which focuses on the ability to route the closest to the receivers as possible. That's really kind of a fundamental shift within the industry. Even your businesses that have 50 to 70 sites around the United States or more, or maybe they even have 10. Quite often what you see is even at a national campaign, they're not targeting, they're not intelligently routing that to say like, how can I get it in home the fastest? They're sending all of it to a singular site, and then worrying about the logistics problems later. And so what you begin to see is if I'm a marketer, for example, and I'm measuring attribution, which actually attribution from a marketing standpoint, direct mail still has one of the most favorable ROIs tied to it, even at a really great expense. They're saying, man, my channel is broken. Like this is really expensive and it's really slow. Well, it doesn't need to be either one of those things, right? Like we've created a supply chain problem where a supply chain problem doesn't need to exist.
That's so interesting. What kind of pushback or naysayers, resistance do you get? And who is it from? Is this from the the stakeholders sitting at the table? Is it from clients who don't believe that this type of change is possible within the industry? Who are your biggest detractors?
Yeah. I think when you look at it from like an enterprise sales perspective, we certainly have competitors that have been in the industry, some of them for literally over 100 years, who will often say like, they can't build true scale. And if they can't build true scale, you can't have quality conformance at scale because it's a nationally distributed network. Or they can't be price competitive because they don't control the supply chain. And I'll admit, we don't control like the heaviest overhead cost associated with managing fixed infrastructure, right? Which doesn't allow us to have pricing volatility that some might have. That's actually a benefit, right? Like a customer knows what they're going to get from us and they get that every time. As it relates to the quality piece, we've created quality at scale. There are very few quality things that like a traditional manufacturer is doing that we're not doing. The difference is we have technology embedded into ours in a way that they probably don't. But that's something that we've had to prove over time, right? Like once that's out there, you're fighting against that. Like there's just no doubt about it. And so that's something that we've had to continue to improve over time. And it's definitely been a journey. There's no doubt. Like we talked about it. When I got here, we had 30 partners across the country. We have like 8 now. And so I would agree that within a network that large, quality conformance is a huge issue. But those are really kind of the main challenges. And fortunately for us, I think that we've gotten enough street cred over time when we build the next thing and embed technology into it. People ask about it, and that's definitely a reflection of our staying power within the industry, and that we've been able to prove that we do know what we're doing. We still get them wrong sometimes, right? Not everyone bats 1,000, but we learn from those things and we iterate from them. To the point where some of those competitors that we're talking about, they're calling us asking how we're doing things too, and so.
That's got
So
to feel good.
yeah, absolutely. Well, that's when when you're doing something right, and they're like, hey, like, have you thought about working with us on this? And it's like, no, not really, but apparently you're thinking about us and that feels really good, And so, that's when like something's really clicking, like they're thinking about you. They show up on your webinars on LinkedIn or something that you're hosting. It's like, okay, like we're making noise here, and that's good. It's a good feeling.
Exactly. And so we've talked about this. We started out talking about engineers and recent graduates and as they're entering the job market and looking at solving some of their first big problems, and then kind of adjusted the conversation to talk about lob. But let's bring it back to them, because you've got all this experience and challenging status quos, disrupting antiquated systems. How can other engineering leaders coach their teams to step back and see that broader system the same way you have, in order to encourage and engage that innovation?
Yeah, a lot of it goes down to the way in which you're talking to your team about the problem that they're trying to solve. If you tell this can be true at any level, but on especially new college graduates and especially like lower line level engineers, if you say like go fix problem, they're going to repeat like, I go fix problem. Right. And then they're going to go to that, like, and then they're going to go fix that problem, and that's what they do. And they're incredibly good at it. What's really important is to coach to outcomes. Like, we need to fix this problem, we believe, because it's going to result in this outcome, right? More product through the building, or more efficient, just overall value stream, or a variable cost reduction of Y as a result of applying X. And so you start to coach to that outcome that begins to have them have a systems approach to that and say like, oh, okay, well, let's go back to the original example that we talked about. If you fix your bottleneck within like a traditional fixed manufacturing structure, what's going to happen is if I have fixed that, I'm now consuming more product upstream. And so have I created downtime upstream that I didn't intend? And so you've now turned your indirect variable cost, that the person that's sitting in front of that machine, you now have an indirect cost that was set that's now, or a direct cost that's now an indirect cost, because you have to have them go do something else that isn't driving value back to the part that they just created. Because now they have downtime, right? Like, you don't need them producing as fast, or you need them producing faster. So it's going to be one or the other. Yeah. And if they're producing faster, can you consume it faster within that bottleneck? Now, maybe I have another bottleneck I created. And if I can't get it out the door fast enough, i.e., I'm not selling it fast enough, what have I done? I've put the cash that I had in my bank account, and I've now put it on a shelf. And it's going to sit in the form of inventory. And now I've created a whole new issue, right? So like, what actual thing are you trying to fix? Because it's never just like, I go fix problem. Like, you have to look at the entire system. And that can be very challenging in very, very large companies, because it often can be opaque of like, what actual problem like are we solving, and who's it for, and what's the delivery. When you think about it, like going all the way back to basic principles in college, we should be teaching them these things. Like, they should understand, when I build a system, understand the financial cost associated with doing that sort of thing. They should understand operational use cases and that sort of thing, not just let's design the next neat thing. And that's not for every engineer. Like, I'll be the first one to admit. And so I'll stop right there.
No, that's great. Well, and you mentioned, obviously, we're talking about college grads and newer engineers into the workforce. We call them analysts at our organization. That's the entry level position. And I also struggle with this, and it's because I'm the marketing person. It's mainly in the regard of trying to showcase what we're doing. Where if I ask them to tell me what they did on a project, they are very formulaic, and they will list every single step that they took. And I'm like, no, how did we solve the customer's problem?
Well, that's where it starts, right? Like, every problem that you're solving within there goes back to solving a customer problem. Like, it's why we all exist. And that sort of framing can really start to contextualize things for people. I love having my team on customer calls, because it is way harder to say no to that customer to their face than it is for an account executive to be like, our customer sure would like it if you did this. No. Right? Like, no, that's okay. And it's like, well, why don't we get on the call and let's understand their pain point, and you tell them why you don't think this could work. And they're almost never going to do that, right? They're going to be like, ooh, like, that's really hard. And it's same for an engineer, and what that delivers in the long term is just so valuable.
Well, and I think we need to at least point out briefly that you have a very solid background in engineering, being an engineering graduate of Purdue University, which is well known for its engineering program. Go Boilermakers! But, so I guess my last question to you would be, having been through that experience yourself, having seen what you have seen throughout your career, if you could redesign a portion of an engineering curriculum, what would you change or add?
I would love to add, and I did this actually, and I can explain this about what I did in school. But first of all, boiler up for sure. Very excited for this year's coming basketball season. Schedule came out yesterday, and I've already got dates circled for where I'm going to see them. But I think one of the issues within the university system itself can often be the lack of cross collaboration between schools within the university itself, right? And so like you take Purdue, for example, which obviously like I feel, especially like you can already see, this jersey up there,
Yes.
but is near and dear to my heart. And I operate with the Daniel School of Business pretty frequently. I operate with the College of Technology really frequently, which is where I actually graduated from. Some of my best friends were MEs. Those schools almost never interact. Um, really only outside of collaborative clubs and that sort of thing. And I think finding ways in which to make those groups come together and build cases together could be really, really interesting. And so one of the things that I did when I was in school, I was the head of two different associations. One was the Purdue Consulting Club, and then the other one was called Apex, which is the Association for Operations Management, which has changed its name a couple of different times now, but it's a global, professional organization. And all the members of those organizations were never just from one discipline. And so we would end up going in case studies where you had to fix like a supply chain problem. You had to understand the financial impact of what you were doing. In some cases, you had to be able to market that. But then it always came back to like operationally, like what problem were you solving? Like those sort of cross-functional things, one, begin to have different thinkers begin to interact with each other far more often than they're probably going to either in college or right out of school. And it also begins to apply like different contextual understanding of, long term, this is what business impact you're going to have. I'll give you an example. So when I was in the Eaton development program, um, at the end of that journey, uh, you present on why they've invested so much in you over your last 2.5 years. And you do it in front of your peers that you spent the last 2.5 years moving around the country with and talking about the cool projects that you've solved. And but this was a very expensive thing for Eaton at the time. And you present this to kind of the board of trustees for that program. And what they're really doing is they're starting to place you on where does this person fit in at? Like, what problems should we have them now go solve? What are problems within the business? What are they the future leader of? And I heard one of them say, and the executive's pretty well known, so I'm definitely not going to say his name, and he's an easy LinkedIn search away, but he said, this is the type of guy, and he wasn't pointing to me. I was actually sitting like awkwardly behind him. He was like, this is the type of guy that you put in a basement and you tell him to go invent something. There's nothing wrong. There's nothing wrong with being that type of engineer. It's just, it's unlikely that everyone in that class is that brilliant mind, right? It's way more likely that they're going to be put in a situation where they have to solve cross-functional business problems with people that don't directly work for them. And we should start that as early in their career and as early in their educational journey as possible.
Absolutely. And we're seeing that in all sorts of organizations as we support them. I'm sure you've seen it as well when we start talking about the different stakeholders and those silos that they're working in, those different business units, and the difficulty of getting them to come together and align on a solution that, you know, rising tides raise all ships. I've used that a lot recently. I don't know why that phrase seems to be applying to so many different aspects of my life right now. But I mean, truly, when they're able to come to the table and talk to each other and see things from different perspectives, the solutions come that much more easily.
Yeah, absolutely.
So as supply chains evolve from fragmented operations to integrated ecosystems, the ability to zoom out and rethink the system is no longer optional. It's strategic. Thank you so much, Brent, for joining us today and sharing some of your insights on both the way that engineers approach problems, but also the way that supply chains can use that thinking to reimagine solutions.
Thank you for having me. I really appreciate the time. This was great.
To our listeners out there, thank you so much for listening. Until next time, thank you for tuning in to Speaking of Supply Chain.